Good afternoon to our panelists as well as our attendees. This is our fourth day of Ethics Week, so thank you guys for attending our sessions. All of the sessions have been very well attended. I want to thank you guys for that. This is our investigation session. So now we're going to hear from employees who conduct various types of investigations within the district government. We have 4 agencies represented here today. I'm going to introduce everyone in the order that they'll be presenting. From the Department of Human Resources, we have Attorney Advisor John Cheek and Sexual Harassment Program Coordinator Devontae Peterson. From the Office of Human Rights, we have Ms. Jamie Wadowski. We have our own investigators, our BEGA investigators, Investigator Ronald Cook, Ralph Bradley, and Ms. Ileana Corrales. She is one of our investigators, but she is recovering from surgery, so she will not be presenting today. Representing the Office of the Inspector General, we have Bernadette Todd, Assistant Inspector General, and Deputy Inspector General Matthew Wilcoxon. Again, that is the order that they will be presenting in today. A brief overview of this presentation. Each agency will talk about its agency's mission, the type of investigations that they conduct, how to file a complaint with their office, their investigative process, and how they have been conducting investigations during the pandemic. As a housekeeping rule, we're going to save all of the questions until the end of the presentation, just to make sure that we have enough time to hear from everyone. If you have a question that's directed towards a specific agency, please make sure that you put that agency's acronym within your question so that we can know who to direct that question to. And with that being said, we can go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the Department of Human Resources.
So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Devontae Peterson, and I'm the Sexual Harassment Program Coordinator with the Department of Human Resources. Next slide, please. The mission of DCHR is to provide human resource management services that strengthen individual and organizational performance while enabling the district government to attract, develop, and retain a well-qualified and diverse workforce. Next slide, please. So what does DCHR investigate? Well, DCHR primarily investigates complaints that are referred to us from BEGA and OIG. We investigate employee suitability, and in this case, suitability refers to conducting criminal background checks for those applicants, employees, and volunteers, just to determine whether they are fit to fill a specific position description. And also, we conduct personnel-related investigations where employees may violate district or federal personnel laws, or an employee may violate the DPM or other district policies. Next slide, please. And how can an employee file a complaint with DCHR? Well, typically, employees don't file complaints with DCHR. As I mentioned in the previous slide, DCHR primarily receives complaints that are referred to us from OIG and BEGA, and DCHR also investigates employee grievances, but we are the fourth and final step of the grievance process because employees should initially file their grievance complaint with their respective agency. And for employee suitability investigation, DCHR has a memorandum of understanding with district agencies to conduct criminal background checks for those employees, applicants, and volunteers seeking to fill a position with the respective agency. Next slide, please.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm John Cheek, an attorney advisor with DCHR, as well as the agency's ethics officer. I'm going to now discuss DCHR's investigative process. When it comes to complaint referrals from BEGA and OIG, these types of investigations are mostly paper review. Some of these investigations may require some interviews of employees. And then how we close out these investigations, we typically issue formal responses to BEGA and OIG, notifying each agency what steps were taken, whether an investigation was required, and the ultimate outcome. For employee suitability investigations, similarly, these are mostly paper review. We look at an FBI report, police and court records. Sometimes it requires us to interview applicants, and actually we do interview applicants when we receive derogatory information in the background check. And then when we close out these investigations, we conduct an 8-factor analysis and issue either a suitable or not suitable disposition. Next slide. So for personnel-related investigations where violations of district or federal personnel laws or the DPM or district policies have occurred, DCHR usually conducts more in-depth investigations. Sometimes we'll have a hybrid situation where not all investigation steps are necessary to conduct personnel-related investigations, and they'll look more like complaint referral investigations. The same with grievances. Some grievances can be resolved by conducting a paper review, while others require an entire investigative process as outlined in the next few slides. On this particular slide, we're just showing you the macro level life cycle of a DCHR Office of the General Counsel investigation. And we typically work to complete these investigations within 60 days. Next slide. So what does an Office of the General Counsel investigation look like? Well, once the investigation team has been given the complaint, we review the complaint and any accompanying attachments and determine what violations the complainant is alleging and what federal or district laws are implicated. Next, we create an investigation plan, which you'll see an example of on the next slide. We also create an organization folder, and this can either be physical or electronic, so we've kind of gotten away from all the paper to retain all the evidence that we obtained throughout the course of the investigation. And then next, we conduct initial background research on the allegations, the complainant, the accused, and other individuals the complainant identifies in their complaint. Now, when we conduct this research in DCHR, we do it a number of ways. We have access to PeopleSoft, so we're able to review personnel records and conduct queries within the system. We also look at employees' official personnel folders. We do octo email requests, and then we talk to other DCHR colleagues who have expertise in the subject matter of the investigation. So once we've completed our initial background research, we assess which documents information will be useful for interviews and answering the complainant's allegations. Next slide. So here's an example of an investigation plan. As you can see, some information is not added until later on in the investigation. Next slide. After we've conducted and reviewed background research, we next schedule and conduct interviews. So when we schedule interviews, we prefer that individuals are interviewed at DCHR, and we prefer this for a couple of reasons. One is privacy. An individual coming to DCHR headquarters avoids being seen by colleagues in their own agency. And then two, focus and attention. Having them come to DCHR allows the individual to be completely focused and attuned to the interview and prevents interruptions from colleagues or other priorities. In conducting our interviews, it is our practice to record the interview and inform the individual that we are recording. And then during the interview, we ask open-ended questions as well as direct questions that address the allegations. And then once we end the interview, we inform the individual that if they experience any form of retaliation, to contact DCHR immediately, and DCHR will investigate those claims. Additionally, we conduct follow-up interviews with individuals if needed based on information we've obtained throughout the course of the investigation. Next slide. So once we have all of the evidence and have conducted all of the interviews, we next draft an investigation report. And then as for notifying the complainant and the accused, we provide statements, not the investigation report itself, about the outcome of the investigation. And then lastly, we fulfill action items in the investigation report or ensure that the relevant agency fulfills the action items resulting from the investigation. Next slide.
Now let's move on to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the COVID-19 pandemic didn't greatly affect DCHR's investigation process. The only thing that has changed was the in-person interviews. And this is because all DCHR employees have moved to a situational telework mode. And so we all primarily communicate through Microsoft Teams and Outlook as well. So we try to focus our investigative interviews through the same avenue, and we transition the in-person interviews to virtual interviews through Microsoft Teams. Next slide, please.
Right. So just piggybacking off of what Devontae said, that in-person interviews are just no longer, we're no longer able to do that at the moment because of the pandemic. And so now the way that we've been conducting interviews is that we've done it electronically or telephonically. At DCHR, we prefer to conduct witness interviews electronically using video conferencing software like Microsoft Teams, but there's also WebEx and Zoom. This allows us to see the individuals as if we were still meeting in person. And in conducting these video conferencing interviews, you want to just make sure you follow a few protocols. One, you want to confirm video conference access. Inform the witness in advance that the interview will be held via video call. This ensures that the witness has video conferencing access and adequate internet connection prior to the call, and that the call will be, and once the interview is being conducted, you let the witness know that it's being recorded. Next is privacy and confidentiality. We instruct witnesses to have the interview call in a private place, prefacing the importance of confidentiality of the interview, and setting boundaries that the interviewee should be in a quiet place away from third parties and other distractions during the call. And then lastly, sharing of evidence. You want to, if you're going to have any exhibits or evidence that you want to share with the witness beforehand, you want to prepare it in advance and be able to use the screen sharing option if it's available. I know it is for Microsoft Teams. Alternatively, you can email password protect documents and send the password in a separate email upon the commencement of the interview. And if you're doing that, just consider the applicable data privacy laws before transmitting certain documents, for example, medical records or personally identifiable information, or PI. So next slide. All right, and I guess I'm going to hand it off to the Office of Human Rights.
All right. Thank you for that, DCHR. My name is Jamie Wadowski, and I am one of the enforcement managers at the Office of Human Rights. So if we want to go ahead and get started on the next slide here. So some of you might be familiar with OHR. We are basically the DC agency that is tasked with enforcing all of the District of Columbia's anti-discrimination laws. And so you can see our mission here is to mainly eradicate discrimination, increase equal opportunity, and to protect civil rights through enforcement of DC's anti-discrimination laws. All right, next slide. So we cover 4 areas under the DC Human Rights Act, which is the law that was establishing the Office of Human Rights and the city's own anti-discrimination ordinance. Employment is the bulk of the cases that we receive. So anyone that feels they've been discriminated against in their place of work. Housing, anyone that's been discriminated against in rental or purchasing of a house and anything associated with that. Public accommodation, which is very broad. It's basically anything that offers services to the public. So that can be anything from hotels to restaurants to taxis. It's very, very broad. So lots of things covered under that. And then educational institutions. So everything from, preschool, elementary school, all the way up through universities and graduate programs within the district. So people that feel they've experienced discrimination in any of the areas of education. Next slide. So we investigate complaints that are filed against both private sector and against DC government. So that for the relevancy of everyone that's watching, any DC government employee that feels they've been discriminated against in their workplace can still file a complaint with OHR to investigate. And so what we don't have jurisdiction over would be any federal government complaints. We don't have any jurisdiction over federal entities, which includes the Metro and WMATA, which is a frequent source of confusion. But since they're not solely a DC agency, we don't have jurisdiction there. And against the DC courts, they are their own separate entity, and so we also don't have jurisdiction over the courts. Next slide. So we enforce quite a lot of laws. I'm not going to read these all out since there's quite a lot, and y'all can read them. It's a very exciting time because the DC City Council is continually kind of looking into what are some, there's the ways that people are used to thinking of discrimination, some of the main things people are aware of, such as discrimination based on race or age or disability, religion, sex. And those are all covered under the DC Human Rights Act, which is very broad. But then we also have DC City Council kind of looking forward and thinking, what are some other ways that people experience discrimination that are less obvious, that DC can be kind of a pioneer in looking at these different forms. And so these include things such as the Protecting Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, providing accommodations for pregnant employees, the Fair Criminal Record Screening Amendments Act, which gives people an opportunity to apply for a job and be considered for a position without having a criminal background check. And then all the way down to some of our newest laws that we'll talk about in a second here. We also, through the DC Human Rights Act and some of these other acts, we essentially enforce the federal civil rights laws that go along with DC. So if you have an employment discrimination issue that falls under the Human Rights Act, we will also look at that in terms of, the Civil Rights Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, Age Discrimination Employment Act, and for housing, we also look at the Fair Housing Act. So these are some of the main things that we look at. And then probably also for essential for DC employees is we enforce the DC Family and Medical Leave Act. So anybody that's taking leave to care for someone or for their own medical condition will come to that. All right, next slide. So these are some of the brand new laws that we are enforcing that City Council has put into place. And so the Fair Criminal Record for housing is similar to employment, where people can be considered housing without a criminal background check being performed until after they've been extended an offer of housing. The Fair Credit Information Amendment Act added credit information as a protected trait in employment. So this would mean that you are able to be considered for a position without someone asking about your credit history or running a credit check on you. And then the newest one is employment protections for victims of domestic violence, sexual offenses, and stalking. So someone that has experienced any of these things cannot be discriminated against because of that. And also the employer may have to provide, some sorts of basic accommodations for people, such as attending court dates or giving additional protections within the workplace if they are in danger. Next slide. So people are, as I said, aware of some of the main traits that are protected federally, which, race, color, sex, national origin, or religion fall under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Disability, you might know as the Americans with Disabilities Act, and age under the Age Discrimination and Employment Act. And then most recently, sexual orientation, gender identity, expression also fall under sex-based discrimination. But then DC also has a variety of traits that are not protected federally. So while you couldn't file, a federal complaint in federal court or with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, you could file with OHR because it's covered locally in DC. And we may be the only jurisdiction I know of that covers political affiliation, but in DC you can imagine that that's, can occasionally be a relevant protected trait. So you can see this is very broad. Some of the last few ones that are included here, such as I think the last four, source of income, status of the victim, interfamily offense, familial status, those four actually apply only to housing. And so if you have a housing discrimination complaint, these are things that also you could file under, such as if you are a voucher holder, Section 8 voucher holder, you can't be, denied a rental unit based on that. So that would be source of income, for example. but very broad, and so there's many different traits that people can file under with our office. Okay, next slide. So filing, the main things you need to look at, the incident needs to have occurred in DC. You don't have to be a DC resident to file, but the actual act of discrimination occurred in DC. So if you're visiting and working in DC, even if you're not a DC resident, it has to be based on one of the 21 protected traits OHR enforces that we just looked at, and you can look those up on our website. You don't need to remember them. Or one of the other laws we enforce, and it has to have happened within the last 365 days last year. And the exception here, which will be very important for all of you DC employees that are watching, is that the law is different for DC government employees. And for whatever reason, under the Human Rights Act, the City Council had a different requirement that DC government employees have to file an employment complaint within 180 days. So it's very important to know that your statute of limitations is not a year, it's 6 months. So that is something I want everybody to keep in mind and note, that if you or someone, another government employee has an employment complaint, you only have 180 days to file with the Equal Employment Opportunity Counselor at your agency before you file with OHR. Next slide. So our complaint process, you file a questionnaire either on our website, or you can print it out and mail it to us. We do an intake interview where we talk to you about your complaint and what happened in your situation and why you believe it happened. And once the complaint is docketed, we have a mandatory mediation process, which is a very successful way of resolving a complaint in an early stage, where the parties can agree on a way to resolve the complaint, and that is often the fastest and most efficient way to resolve it. And it's I think it's very significant under DC's law. Unlike some other laws, for example, federal laws, it's not required. Mediation is not mandatory. But since in our process the parties have to come together and attempt to mediate a solution, we have a much higher success rate of cases settling, which is really positive. After that, if the case can't settle in mediation, we have a full investigation. I spent the last 9 years as an investigator before becoming an enforcement manager. And so we handle very detailed, thorough investigations. And then after the investigation is finished, the director of OHR issues a determination on the case, whether there is probable cause to believe discrimination occurred or no probable cause to believe discrimination occurred. And if there is a finding of probable cause, the case proceeds for a full hearing on the merits in front of the DC Commission on Human Rights. All right, next slide. So the investigative process is very detailed. I wanted to provide a lot of information for everybody on what our process is. Our process, if anyone's filed with us, you know that our process can take some time. It generally takes between 1 to 2 years for a complaint to get through our process, because we have so many steps and we try to conduct a very thorough investigation. And so I always like to let people know what the steps are so that they can understand why it takes so long with our agency. And that's because we're trying to give every complaint the full attention that we can. And so the first thing that happens is you file a charge of discrimination, the complainant. And then after that, we will ask the respondent, which is the business or agency the complaint is filed against, to basically respond, provide their position. How do they respond to your charge of discrimination? Then after that, we will give the complainant the opportunity to review that and respond. And if they have anything to rebut what the respondent has said, they have a chance to present a response to that with their supporting evidence. We will send out requests for information, which are kind of like interrogatories in the court process, where we'll ask both sides for additional information and documents. And then we will interview the complainant who filed the complaint to get a better understanding of their allegations and to talk about any information that may contradict what they've filed, and to have them present any witnesses they might have. Then we will contact witnesses that are from both sides. Both sides have presented as possible witnesses to their version of the allegations. And then we'll go through, we'll see if there's anything else we need, and we will draft what's called a letter of determination. And that is a summary of the investigation, and it will go through a couple steps of review under the manager and then our Office of General Counsel to see if the investigation is thorough and to determine what OHR's findings are, whether there's a finding of probable cause or no probable cause. So like I said, that process can generally take anywhere between 1 to 2 and sometimes more, depending on the circumstances, more than 2 years. All right, next slide. So the impact of COVID, we've experienced definitely some significant challenges due to COVID. OHR is working on with OCTO a new case management system, and so at this point we still were relying pretty heavily on paper files in addition to an electronic system. And so that initially created some issues, as you can imagine, in trying to transition to doing things more electronically when we had such a reliability on paper files. And some of our paper files are very thick, and so converting those so that they could be electronically available when people needed them, and then staff being able to go in and access the paper files so that we could convert things to electronic when needed. We, at any given time, have about 600 open investigations at OHR. And so we have, and each year we receive about 1,200, 1,300 complaints, inquiries. So every single one of those has a case file. There are a lot of them. And so we've been establishing electronic procedures. A real challenge has been the mediations, because if any of you have been through the mediation, there's multiple parties involved. And the mediator works with each party with everybody together in one time and then separately in caucuses. And it's really something that it doesn't lend itself easily to a process that's virtual, to be able to have a session with everybody together and then to break out continually with the mediator, with each party, to talk to them privately and then to have everybody come back together. But at this point, we've managed to smooth out that process, and our mediation team is conducting mediations virtually. And actually would like to witness them doing it because it sounds really complicated, but they're making it work. Same thing, we've had some difficulties with the parties providing access, having access to files. So employers will be asking them for information, but we have some employers that are still closed and they have difficulty accessing their files or accessing witnesses who have been laid off or are furloughed for the time being. So it might take longer for us to get responses to our requests for information. And then, so people are filing a lot more extension requests based on that to submit information, which has caused investigations to take longer. Another significant issue that we've experienced is that OHR is a pretty small agency. We only have, I think, about 45 employees. And we had a number of open positions at the time the crisis started. And so we were working to deal with some understaffing issues in OHR at the beginning of the crisis that all had to either be put on hold or were frozen entirely. And so we've been unable to fill some positions that we were in the process of trying to fill or hoping to fill so that we could deal with some of the understaffing. At this point, each investigator has about 75 cases at any given time. And so that's quite a lot for one person to manage. And we're hoping that with the beginning of FY21 here, we're able to have some new hires and try to bring down everybody's caseload so cases can be processed faster. And then one of the additional things is you may be aware, but the DC City Council has passed the emergency amendments to the DC Family and Medical Leave Act that have given people some additional protections during this crisis for their own medical health, for dealing with family members with medical issues related to this, and even having to take leave to care for children who aren't in school or daycares are closed right now. And so due to those amendments, which are really good to protect everyone in DC, it has caused additional complaints and confusion for people not understanding, and then people more filing with our office. And then finally, we had a brand new law that was set to go into effect at the beginning of July of this year. that you may have heard of, and it's the Universal Paid Leave Act, which grants up to 8 weeks of parental leave for, something such as maternity leave, paternity leave, so that was a brand new law that went into effect for private employees. DC government employees, we already had this for you, but this is brand new for anyone working for a private employer. So we've gotten new complaints based on that. Next slide. So some of these I've already mentioned. We started working with electronic files. We aren't able to take complaints in person anymore, where people can just walk in and fill out their complaints at the office. Some people without computers have some file. And other witnesses that used to happen in person are now happening, by phone. And then mediations are mostly happening by video when possible. And we used to have people be able to submit documents in person. So whenever people had their big stack of supporting evidence, they could walk in and hand it to our front desk. And now there's a little more that has to go into that. But we are able to carry out basically all of the same functions. It's just taken a little bit of tweaking. So I think that is it for me. Is that everything? Is there any more slides? Nope, that's it. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All righty. Thank you, Jamie, for that informative segment. We really appreciate it. This is Ralph Bradley. I'm going to be going over the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability Office of Government Ethics. I'll present the initial segment, and I'll be followed by Investigator Ron Cook as well. You can go to the next slide, please. All right, Office of Government Ethics is one of the two agencies that fall under the Board of Ethics and Government Accountability, the other being the Office of Open Government. And we are primarily responsible for investigating any allegations of ethical misconduct that's concerning the district government employees and the officials selected to serve in the district. Go on to the next slide, please. And OIG also has an additional responsibility. We provide both advice and training to district employees as it relates to government ethics. You'll find that within our office, we have investigative teams that are paired up with an attorney advisor is paired with an investigator. We have 3 teams that are represented, and as a result, we work in conjunction with one another to ensure that our case activity is up to date, but we also provide the advice. It's recommended that anyone prior to getting into an opportunity where they have to make a decision that might impact them with ethical decisions, that we contact the office, and our attorney advisors will provide binding ethics advice and give them a statement to give them the boundaries upon which they can act, whether it's currently employed or post-government activity, if it's outside employment, any potential conflicts of interest. We provide that training and advice to the employee to make sure they don't fall into any pitfalls that might lead to a potential violation of ethics rules. Also, we're involved with training. We conduct training at entry point upon coming into government employment with the district through the new member orientation, but we also provide training as relates to management that might find that there's a vulnerability within their agency. They want to make sure that their staff is up to date and trained. So they might want to come to us and recommend or request specific training to be conducted for their agencies. And also for those individuals that might have already suffered one of the pitfalls and are asked to go through a more detailed ethics training, we also provide that training for employees to make sure that they are reminded and continue to follow up with their proper ethical behavior. Also falling under OGE, we also are responsible for oversight of the lobby registration activity. We make sure we maintain the database and that anyone who's seeking activity to lobby with the government is registered properly with the government so that they too can be compliant with the requirements that fall within their purview. We also manage the compliance with the financial disclosure statement filing requirements. We make sure that any employee that's required to file that their disclosure statements are on file so that we can also address any potential problems that might present themselves as a result of any potential conflicts of interest. If you can go on to the next slide, please. All right, how to submit a BEGA complaint. We still are able to receive in-person complaints if necessary. We do recommend that individuals apply through a process that's not involving personal contact, but we understand that some of the citizens within the area may still not be able to subscribe to these processes. So we do have limited administrative staff that's in the office to receive the complaints, although those are extremely minimal. We do accept them in person when those complaints come into the office. We want to make sure that they're filed properly. The complaint is actually forwarded to an investigator who, if on site at the moment, will go ahead and meet with the complainant and conduct an interview at that point. In the current times of COVID, we receive the complaint and then we follow up those communications by an investigator within up to 7 days, just to make sure we make contact with the complainant and we get the specific details and additional evidence or information that's required or that they want to provide. We do still accept complaints via mail. Those are hard copy complaints that come in through into the office, and we treat those as well in a similar manner. We make sure that the information is presented to our intake process, that it's properly documented in our case management system, and that we have it assigned out to one of our investigative teams. And at that point, the investigator will make contact with the complainant and have an opportunity to get the additional information that is needed to continue on with the investigation. I did want to speak briefly about our case management system. We do have an automated case management system, and that system is used both for intake, it's used for initiating investigative complaints. It's also a place where we input and maintain all of the documents and documentary evidence that comes through, and that it's accessible to the investigators and, if need be, our regulatory staff to address any of the information that's being input into the system. It's also a process where we can update, approve, return for amendment documents that need to be provided through our chain. And then the final documents are presented and maintained within this case management system from the beginning of the system through the end of the investigative process and any of the regulatory collection activity that might take place subsequent to our investigative activity. So we do have that case management system in place. We do have web portal submissions, which is our preferred method, which we want to encourage people to participate in. We receive it through our links that are posted here on the site. And when it's provided, it's you fill out a questionnaire that lays out specific information that is helpful to us to understand the nature of the complaint, the complainant information, which we would prefer, if possible, that we have information to reach back to and get further information. And it lays out any potential violators or witnesses that might be associated for us to follow up with. And also we have our hotline, and we'll receive via phone, that's listed here as well. And we're available to receive calls there. That's maintained definitely during the business day, and messages can be left after business hours and they're followed upon at the next business day. Okay, please, next slide. All right. This next segment is beginning into the BEGA investigative process. Like I said, we're broken up into teams, and our investigations are gathered, and we put together an investigative plan, put together the information to figure out how we're going to proceed with the complaint. But when we get the complaints in, there are three types that we address. Our formal complaints come in, allegations that are received with a formal complaint. We also have any findings coming from the OIG or the DCHR or the court. Those cases are received and assigned a formal designation as well. And the key to the formal designated cases is that those cases are provided to our board for presentation and review within 14 days. And that is one of the processes that also has feedback to the complainant and the potential complainant. The response will come directly back from the board as well. So the formal complaint goes to the board and the response comes back from the board. Most of our cases fall into our preliminary category, and those, after we receive the information in the complaint, we follow the similar process that was discussed with the previous investigators. We get together, establish whether the complaint has merits and are determined to be significant enough for follow-up for an investigation. So we get together and discuss that potential allegations and discuss the elements of those allegations. And we put together an investigative plan, and then we proceed, as we previously discussed, with complainant interviews, witness interviews, and so on. But we'll get into that detail with Investigative Proce here with the investigative process. Regulatory process, FDS and lobbyists, we do have employees within our office that manage and maintain those two programs. And so we also conduct those investigations. And our investigations of ethics violations may lead or be associated with financial filings or with lobbyists, and our regulatory partners assist us with those investigations as well. All right, next slide, and I'll pass it off to Ron.
Good afternoon. I'm Investigator Cook. I apologize, Mr. Bradley. My computer froze for some reason. So I'm just going to go through our investigative process kind of briefly. So this is basically what you see listed is how we go through. It's kind of similar to what we've heard already from DCHR and OHR. So we conduct research. We do employment verifications, pull different type of documents from different systems, PeopleSoft, Octo email requests. We use search systems such as Clear, Lexis, and TLO. We pull information from businesses, different corporate documents and things of that nature to help. We also look at public and social media, which is always, I would say, very interesting and always helpful because a lot of people like putting their personal business out on the street. So social media and public information always help. So then we determine the agency coordination. After the complaint comes in and we take a look at it, we sit down and meet about it, determine whether or not it's actually an ethical violation or has possible criminal implications. At that point, we will sit down as a team and decide whether or not we're going to take on that case or we're going to refer it to one of our law enforcement agencies such as OIG, OAG, or MPD. And most regulatory cases that we receive that determine more personnel-related matters, like Mr. Cheek said earlier, we'll forward those over to DCHR, OPRS, and DACF for actual review. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so usually this is how investigations start. We'll start out with information requests. We issue requests to certain agencies to gather information that's needed to further pursue the complaint that we have, try to get any supporting documents that are needed to just kind of give us a clear idea of actually what's going on and what type of violations have occurred. We use subpoenas. We do have subpoena power to pull certain documents from banks and different organizations that we normally wouldn't have access to. So at that point, if it becomes difficult to just get those type of documents outside of just regularly asking for them, we will go to the board and ask for subpoena power in that case to gather that information. After we've gotten all the information that we need, like I said, we sit down as a team again, develop an investigative process, find out what witnesses we need to speak to. If they have any other information that we would definitely need to further move on through the process, we do that. After that, we send out notifications to the individuals who we need to talk to, informing them that we need to speak to them face-to-face, which was normally the case before COVID started. So we have those individuals come into the office, interviews. If we couldn't get them in, if they were in a certain position where their schedule was kind of tight, we would go over to their agency. I know, John, you spoke earlier about how you kind of try to make it discreet, but some individuals, they decide that they don't want to show up. So in those instances, we would have to go out, contact the general counsel from their agency and go over and have those interviews done inside of their agency in a secret location, which is, basically the same, but it wouldn't be on location in our office. So like I said, we'll send out the notifications and schedule the interviews. Once we finish all of that, we prepare the investigative summary of facts. Once that's done, the legal team will usually take all of the information that we've gathered and then make a decision on whether or not what type of disposition is going to be done, whether it's going to be a fine, whether it's going to be a notice of violation, whether it's going to be a negotiated disposition. And if none of those work, then we usually go to open an adversarial hearing. We haven't had many of those because most DC government employees wish to settle or, kind of deal with whatever has happened and kind of keep it quiet instead of letting it get out to the media and so forth. Next slide. So once COVID started in March, Vegas suspended all in-person interviews amid concerns over the coronavirus outbreak. This eliminated the element of surprise, which we usually use when dealing with certain witnesses and respondents. It allows more time for witnesses and respondents to prepare. It's easier for them to see us coming instead of being able to just pop up on them and have these things done immediately. They can sit down and talk amongst each other. Kind of takes away a lot of the elements of what we usually use to get certain information that we wouldn't normally be able to get. So our preferred choice has been video conferencing. This has become the preferred method to conduct interviews with witnesses and respondents. We use WebEx, Zoom, and other things. I mean, WebEx and Zoom have been the main two that we kind of look forward to. They seem to be the most secure. Also, phone interviews. Any investigator knows that phone interviews are the worst. It's better than no interview at all. But it's almost impossible to assess the attitude of individuals over the phone, nonverbal cues and the potential deception. You also can have other individuals sitting there coaching them while the interview is being conducted. I mean, with the interview being blind, you really have no control over it. So we try to stay away from the phone interviews. We may contact individuals through the phone, via telephone, just to kind of set up everything. But, dealing with individuals in D.C. is not like everybody in D.C. And some people who work for D.C. agencies don't have that video conferencing possibility. But they should have it, but they may say they don't. So we're not exactly sure. So that's been difficult. As far as obtaining documents, this process has kind of remained normal for us, even though it's been slow because individuals are at home. They don't have access to those physical documents that are in the office that we need. So it may take time, more time. But basically, it's been kind of the same. It may have been stretched out, dragged out maybe a week, week and a half longer than it normally takes. So that's basically what we've been dealing with during COVID, and those are the changes that we made. Not much. So basically everything's kind of stayed the same outside of switching from in-person to video conference. And I think that's basically it for us.
All right, afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Wilcoxon with the OIG. Ashley, can you go to the next slide? There we go. Real quick, the mission and function of the OIG is not only do we conduct investigations, but we also have audit and inspection role as well. And oftentimes the three areas kind of lend themselves to some synergies. But germane to this presentation is we really do two types of investigations. One being general investigations that Bernadette's unit handles that investigates fraud committed against the district's programs and operations. But we also have a Medicaid fraud control unit, which investigates Medicaid patient abuse and neglect, as well as misuse of patient funds and fraud committed against the Medicaid program. And so in conducting those investigations, we have some limited authorities to safeguard our investigators and also help with the criminal investigative mission. You go to the next slide. A lot of times people ask how we interact with other oversight agencies. So, DCHR, OHR, and they have discussed how they interact with our office. We also are required to interact with the DC auditor to make sure that we're not duplicative in the proactive work we do, be it inspections or inspections or audits. There are often times where district agencies are conducting administrative investigations, and we oftentimes try to work with those agencies at the onset of those investigations, just so that if there's any indicia of criminal misconduct, we can quickly address it and make sure that witnesses aren't tainted or evidence doesn't disappear or become nullified. Being that the district's a unique jurisdiction, we have relationships with other federal OIGs that have programs that are run and operated through the district, but also the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the Office of the Attorney General. For those administrative investigations that we conduct and their substantiated allegations, we'll refer to the district agency for their action deemed appropriate. And then, obviously, we coordinate with VEGA on a weekly, if not daily basis concerning matters underneath our respective jurisdictions. We go to the next slide, just for everyone watching at home. The DPM, the district's personnel manual, is very, very specific in terms of making employees or putting them on notice that they're to report credible violations of any sort of ethics or misconduct issues to both VEGA and the OIG. And the OIG and VEGA will then in turn take those through our respective processes, and when there's potential duplicity, we can put those as such. So please, be aware of that requirement. Going on to the next slide. We ask that agencies reach out to both the OIG and or VEGA prior to initiating any sort of administrative investigation or action, because efforts taken by district agencies may jeopardize effective criminal or civil prosecutions down the road. As we say, witnesses, subjects, stories may change, but also evidence may disappear. So we ask that agencies, keep that in mind. We issued a management implication report a few years ago, and I'm happy to share it with folks after this presentation. And we always leave it with the thought at the end of the day, district agencies themselves are the ones that are responsible for effective internal controls. It's none of these oversight agencies' responsibility is to make sure things are done right. It's up to the individual agencies themselves. So we're there just to help and provide oversight where necessary. Going on to the next slide, Bernadette will walk us through the rest.
Thank you, Matt. So in the interest of time, I'm going to try to move through this pretty quickly in the event that there are some questions. So this is how folks can file a complaint. We have a lot of ways that you can reach us. Even in COVID, we're still taking complaints, doing interviews. If you could move to the next slide. Thanks. Our investigative process is very similar to what a lot of folks are doing. This is just an overall view of the organization and kind of how we operate. With investigations, the two investigative units at the end of this scheme here we're reactive, right? So information comes in, proactively we'll look at it through our audits and inspections and evaluations. They're active, but investigations is reactive. We respond to what comes through the door. If you could, next slide. Thanks. So our investigative process is, like I said, very similar to a lot of folks. We, get a lot of allegations. We work hard to, just based on the volume of calls that we get, we work hard to kind of validate complaints and substantiate information before we decide to proceed. It's really critical for folks who are listening at home that we have actionable information. Sometimes folks will call and give a complaint and say, you need to investigate this entire agency. They're corrupt and doing bad things, but aren't really specific about who is corrupt or what bad things they're doing. So that information is really critical for us to be able to respond. We also develop investigative plans. 95, if not higher, % of the investigations that we do are criminal. So we are always looking at the federal statutes or district code to see what laws have been, violated, potentially violated, and what evidence we would need to support a successful prosecution in those cases. And then we conduct our investigations. I think for our office, our method for investigating is getting smart before we go talk to people. We go out. And so in that vein, the COVID situation has been not a tremendous impact for us investigatively because we do all of our research and our homework up front, so that when we walk into an investigation or walk into an interview with a target, we're ready and we're not wasting time. There's sometimes some value in doing those interviews early, but it is our preference and kind of our philosophy that you may only get one chance in an interview, and so you want to be ready when you go in. Disposition and reports, same as everybody else. You know, we have to make a call at some point in an investigation, and either we'll get it accepted for prosecution and move forward. Those cases can take, up between a year is a standard we shoot for, but generally about two years, and can be longer depending on if it grows during the course of the investigation. And then we will issue a report at the end. All of our reports are available on our website. And so impacts due to COVID. Like everybody else, we had to adjust. Fortunately for us, we have been invested heavily in technology, so we had a lot of platforms already stood up, ready to do investigations remotely. Our case management system is online. We have online intake of calls. We had already developed the capacity to do teleconferencing. Our ability to get evidence and download it remotely, secured VPN access, we had all of those things in place. So other than people just adjusting to being at home and having random cats and family members move through sometimes calls, I think we transitioned rather well. I think our biggest impact is what we would do in the field. Criminal investigations, you cannot investigate from home or your desk. You essentially do have to go out at some point. But for voluntary interviews, you got to get people to cooperate and agree to that, and there's just a risk. So we have done the virtual interviews generally with attorneys, and folks are in their attorney's office. When we've done the subject interviews, we've done remote witness interviews. They're not ideal, as Ron, said. There's certain energy that you miss being in the room and being able to kind of capture, but the video conferencing is the next best thing for us. Again, I would agree with the telephonics are just not ideal because, you cannot see who's in the room, and you certainly can't read responses. For us, I think the one thing that we could not control were the courts. So for a period of time, grand juries were shut down. We weren't having any court hearings, and everything got delayed. So all of the matters that we had going to either trial or for sentencing just stopped. The district court has certainly started to begin operations again. Grand juries are sitting again. And so things were pushed or scheduled based on priority. But we are starting to get things moving again. And so we're hopeful by the end of the year we'll be back to some semblance of normal. Justice delayed is justice denied. So we're other than that, I think we're doing very well. I'm very pleased with how the agents have responded, and they really just rolled with it with the pandemic, and so that's it for us.
Okay, thank you all. We have a few questions within the chat box for Vega and DCHR. Do you record your electronic interviews?
Yes, we do. This is the investigative cook from Vega. Yes, we do record all of our interviews.
Same here. I think I mentioned when we do Microsoft Teams, there's a recording feature in Teams that allows us to record interviews. And I think there's one for WebEx. I think we're actually recording this session here. So, yes, we do record our interviews.
Okay. All right. And this question is not addressed to anyone specifically, but what happens if the complaint has not been addressed due to the COVID-19 pandemic? Anyone feel free to answer. Or
Well, I think COVID has slowed down the process in which we actually operate. So I wouldn't say that complaints aren't being addressed. They might not be addressed as quickly as some individuals would like, but you have to take into account that things have been slow. Investigations and complaints and stuff. Complaints are coming in, but the investigations have slowed down, so the process takes a little more time. So I wouldn't say that they aren't being looked at. It just may take a little longer to get to them. But we are moving, as I can speak for our agency, and I'm pretty sure all the other agencies, we are doing the best that we can amid the circumstances.
I would just piggyback off of that and just say, we're still investigating complaints as they come in. And I would just say if anyone feels that their complaint hasn't been looked at, that they should follow up with that agency to just check and see if any movement has been made. We can always give a status update, but speaking for DCHR, I know we don't ignore complaints that are sent to our agency.
I think for us, we certainly don't ignore complaints, but we also don't take everything that comes through the door. We don't have the resources to do that, and given our responsibility to conduct criminal investigations, in as much as district agencies have their own internal investigative bodies, barring any significant or known conflict, we might refer it back to these other teams who are capable of doing particularly the administrative matters. So during COVID, we certainly have been judicious with our resources, just given the fact that things are slowed down. We looked at cases or matters, especially with statute of limitations issues, but in terms of complaints, we are still reviewing them. They're still getting processed. We are still applying the same matrices that we would to evaluate them. But, certainly if there's a health and safety risk, we're going to prioritize those things. If there's ongoing current fraud, particularly COVID-related fraud, we're going to focus our efforts on that. Historical matters will remain historical, and so we don't necessarily have to jump on that right away. But yeah, we've made some adjustments, but everything should be being handled. Nothing should fall into a black hole.
And Jamie, you have a response?
Yeah, just basically the same that people have said. Things have just been slower, but we're still doing our best, not only to get to new complaints that are coming in, but, it's also slowed down kind of our processing of even older complaints. So ones that have been pending for a while, unfortunately taking a little longer too, but we're doing our best. That's what I can say.
As we all are. Okay, so that is all that we have for questions. I don't see any more questions within the chat or the Q&A box. So I want to thank our panelists for participating today. This was very informative. I want to thank the attendees. And if you guys think of any questions afterwards, you can always email our becca@dc.gov, and we'll make sure that your question gets to the right person. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,